One of the main attractants for barbel, if you're a barbel fisherman, is hemp. And you can buy it pre-prepared, but it's quite expensive stuff, and you get through a fair amount. So I've bought 25 kilograms of dry seed, and I'm going to prepare it in 5 different ways just to see how it compares with the stuff you purchase in the shop. So I'm going to start with the dry seed and quite simply boil it. I'm going to boil some in a pressure cooker and just boil some in a pan. And then the second one, I'm going to soak it for 24 hours and then repeat the process and see what I get. And then I'll just let some germinate, as you do when you're preparing malted seed for brewing, and then compare those 5 with pre-prepared hemp which you buy in the shop. I'll also add to some of it some sodium bicarbonate, which is supposed to make the case, somewhat darker, but I'm not sure that makes a vast lot of difference, and sodium bicarbonate tastes terrible. But at the end of the day, the proof of the pudding will be in which one catches most barbel, and that would be very, very difficult to ascertain scientifically. You'd need to do hundreds and hundreds of trials, and of course when you get to the river the conditions change every day or every week, and so trying to keep everything the same except for the different kinds of hemp would be impossible. But anyway, have a look at it, see what you think of it, and make your own mind up. But whatever you're confident with, I suppose, is what it's about. And that's what 25 kilograms of hemp seed looks like in a bag. Well, that's the seed, and it looks remarkably clean. There's just the odd bit in. But for what we want, it isn't going to make any difference. So I'll start with half a pint in the pressure cooker, and the other half a pint I'll just put in a pan and boil it for half an hour and see what comes. Well, there's the pressure cooker, and it seems to work a treat after all those years. Yeah, amazing. I thought the rubber seal around the lid would be useless, but it works all right. Well, there we are. This is starting with the dry seed, and so it's 1 part of seed, 2 parts of water. And you have to be careful if you just dry it in an open pan. You get this froth, and if you don't keep an eye on it, it'll boil over the top, and that will really cause a smell in your kitchen. Actually, the smell isn't too bad. I can't understand what all the fuss is about. Well, this is after half an hour in the pressure cooker. After 10 minutes, just starting with the dry seed, there was no change at all. After 20 minutes, a few had opened up, and then now it doesn't look too bad, and if you squeeze them, they're all quite soft. Whereas with the pan, this was after stewing them for an hour, and a fair number of them have opened up, but there are a sizable number that aren't, but they're all still quite soft. They're all squish. even those that haven't opened up, if you they squash quite well. Anyway, what I'll do now is I'll put some more in and leave them to soak for 24 hours and then repeat the whole thing. But you can see that these are, which had the sodium bicarbonate in, these are quite dark, whereas these are quite light. So what I'll do is I'll swap it over. I'll put the sodium bicarbonate in the pressure cooker tomorrow, and I'll just, in the pan, I'll just boil them without and see if it changes it over. And the other thing is this liquor, is this layer of oil floating on the top. I would think it's mix it with ground bait. I would think it would be a big attractant, and you get an awful lot of it. Well, they've been soaking now for over 24 hours, so we'll have another go and see how we get on after they've been soaked. So I'll boil the pressure cooker for 10 minutes, and I'll boil those in that pan there for about 20-25 minutes and see what happens. And I'll put the sodium bicarbonate in the pressure cooker this time, not in the pan, see if it makes any difference to the colour. Well, that's they've just been soaked for 24 hours and then boiled for half an hour. And I must say, it's quite disappointing. Some of these are still very hard. And this is after soaking and being in the pressure cooker for about 10 minutes. It's not bad, it's not brilliant, but it's a fair number of them have cracked open. They're also darker, so obviously that sodium bicarbonate seems to make a difference. Anyway, whichever way you do it, it seems that the pressure cooker works better than just boiling in a pan, whether you start with a dry seed and just cook them for half an hour in the pressure cooker, or whether you soak them for 24 hours and then cook them for 10-15 minutes in a pressure cooker. You seem to get a better result. Well, we'll just have to keep trying, see if we can improve upon it. In this final method, I'm quite simply going to let the seed germinate. So I'm going to soak it for a couple of days in a bucket. And I'm going to spread it quite thinly in the bottom of a plastic box until it's germinated. The big problem with this is infection from fungus and bacteria, so you have to be quite careful that you don't allow these things to stagnate. So whilst it's in the bucket with the water, I'll change the water a couple of times, and every time I go past it I just give it a swill round. And then when I spread it in the bottom of the box, well, first of all I've got to make sure that it doesn't dry out, so I can just quite simply spray it with water if I see it drying out. And I just sort of stir it around with my fingers every time I go past it, just to make sure that there's sufficient oxygen in there for the seed to germinate. And I'll leave it to germinate for probably, well, 3 days. It's the same process as they use for malting barley for brewing, but at the end of the process they kill the germinated barley by roasting it. Whereas what I'll do is when it gets to the right stage, I'll kill the germinating hemp by quite simply bringing it up to 100 degrees with steam in a pan. Well, that's the hemp seed in the bucket. It's a couple of pints, and just going to soak it in water for a couple of days. Just change the water twice a day if I can remember. And that stops any bacteria and fungus developing in here, which would quite simply kill the seeds, cause them to rot, which I don't want, obviously. So there's the seed after it's been soaking for a couple of days, and I've changed the water 3 times. So what I've done is I've just strained it and put it in the bottom of this box, this plastic box, in a quite shallow layer to germinate. Now obviously I don't want any bacteria or fungi in here. So I'll just keep it covered with a towel. But every day, just to make sure that you don't get any fungi or bacteria in it, it's important that you move this seed about. It's also important that you don't let it dry out. And I'll leave it to germinate for a few days and see what we get. In fact, I'll video it every day to see what comes of it. You can see that some of the seeds are in fact already showing signs of germination, and that they've split, and the first root is beginning to emerge. But yeah, interesting. If you leave it to germinate in the bucket, the layer is too thick and the seeds at the bottom don't get enough oxygen and die off and begin to rot. So you want a thin layer. And every day you just sort of stir them around with your hands. Well, the hemp's been germinating for 2.5 days now. So, and I think it's about ready. And there you can see it. It's probably germinated too much, if truth be known. Anyway, I certainly don't want it to germinate anymore, so I need to kill it. And to kill it, I'll quite simply use boiling water. So I'll put it in a pan and add a cup of water to it and just bring it to the boil, and that should kill it off. So there it is in the pan. I'm just going to add a small amount of water to this out of the kettle. That'll do. Just let that soak through, and then I'll put a lid on, bring it up to the boil. I don't want to boil it because I'll just end up stewing everything. So I'll just put a lid on, bring it up to the boil, and just leave it, and that will kill them off. In the malt barley business, the beer business, of course, they roast this to produce the malt which they need for brewing.
can tell when it's hot enough because when you put your hand on this, it's 100 degrees Celsius boiling water. I don't want to continue boiling it, I just want to kill it. So I'll lift it off, that'll be enough. I only use a tiny amount of water to kill these things off, which of course I could quite simply keep in with the hemp, keep it moist. So there's the finished product. I don't think that looks too bad. It's probably slightly over germinated, but the nice thing about it is, because you aren't stewing it in masses of water, which you end up pouring away, which contains lots and lots of the oils from the hemp, by germinating it like this, all the vast majority of the oils and whatever else it is which attract the barbel are still there. Because the proof will be whether you catch any more barbel with them or not. This is purchased hemp, pre-prepared hemp. Obviously it's very convenient. You don't have to go through this whole hoo-ha of preparing the stuff. What I have noticed is that the hemp which I bought and prepared, the seed is much bigger than the hemp which I purchased, which was already prepared. It's also lighter in colour. So there it is, germinated hemp on this side and purchased hemp on this side. Well, make of it all what you will. I'll bag this up and stick it in the freezer. It keeps very well in the freezer. Just as a matter of interest. You often see people asking, what's the difference between hemp and marijuana? Well, it would seem not a lot. They're both the same species of plant, Cannabis sativa it's called. There are lots of different varieties of it, different strains, just as different strains of tomatoes or potatoes or even dogs for that matter. The important difference comes to the amount of this chemical, this hallucinogenic drug, THC, which they contain. Years ago, when the Americans were sort of paranoid about all this, a chap called Small, based in Ottawa, made a sort of decision that if you take the flower heads off these things and dry them, if you get less than 0.3% of this THC, it was regarded as hemp. And if it was more than 0.3% THC, it was treated as marijuana. And that stuck. That was the accepted level. So if it was less than 0.3% THC, you could grow the stuff. Although not in America, I have to say. They wouldn't allow you to grow any of it. Although things are beginning to change now because of the change in law in various states. So it's below 0.3% THC. It was grown for fibre and for hemp oil, which has all kinds of uses. And the fibre does grow all kinds of uses.
Used to use it for making rope, but of course that's been superseded by man-made fibre. But it's still used in making things like fibreboard. Marijuana or cannabis plants which produce THC, they tend to have a very high level of THC, about 5% as opposed to 0.3%. And current legislation throughout the world seems to suggest that between 0.3% and 1% of this chemical THC is a very grey area. But this hemp we use for fishing contains levels of THC way below the 0.3%. So if you're thinking of growing this stuff for wacky backy, you might as well save your used tea bags.